Hello everyone and welcome to the chapter number 51 of Blender Master Course, Geometry Nodes Part 2 of Creating a Lighting Scene. In the previous chapter, we begin with the creation of this lighting scene, and in today's chapter, we'll be understanding all these concepts in complete detail and we'll be using them to finalize our scene. And yes, for those of you who are new to this course, you can check out the previous 51 chapters from the link of the playlist in the pinned comment. So we are back in the scene where we created this plane with the help of gradient texture and the RGB curves node. Then we created this thunder lighting with the help of all these geometry nodes. And now the first topic for today's chapter is understanding the instance to points node. Now the instance to points node is different from this instance on points node that we have used a lot in this course. We use this instance on points node in order to place a particular object as the instance on different points of another object, and in the output we used to get these instances. But let's also understand the instance to points node by adding it in the geometry nodes editor. So press Shift plus A, go to instances and select the instances to points node. Let's place it over here, and now this node basically takes the instances as the input and converts them into points. So here, if I take the instances socket in the instance on points node and connect it to the instances in the instance to points node, and then to see the result, if I hold down Ctrl Shift and left click on the instances to points node, then you can see here that at the position of the instances, we now have these points added. Now suppose you want to place a particular object as the instance on these points, then for this we can add an instance on points node after the instance to points node. So I'll select this one, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate and place it over here. Then for the instance, I'll be adding a simple cube. So press Shift plus A, go to mesh, and in the primitives, select the cube object. We'll place it over here, connect the mesh socket to the instance. Now before moving ahead, let's also place all these nodes properly in the scene so that there is no confusion. So I'll move these nodes that were connected to the set position node over here. Similarly, let's select these nodes and move them up like this. Now suppose you want to change the position of these cubes that we added here, then you can do it directly from the position socket in the instance to points node. So to give them a random position, let's first add a vector match node. So press Shift plus A, go to utilities, then in the vector, select the vector match node. Let's place it over here, connect the vector socket to the position. Then for the first vector socket, let's add a position node. So press Shift plus A, go to geometry, and in the read, select the position node. Place it over here, connect it to the first vector. Then to add some randomness to the position, we'll be connecting the random value node in the second vector. So press Shift plus A, go to utilities, and select the random value node. We'll place it over here, change the data type from float to vector, and connect the value socket to the vector socket. And now because of the vector match node with the add operation connected to the position and the random value, some random value between 0 and 1 is being added to the position of all of these cubes placed as the instances. Also, you can control the amount of randomness from the minimum and the maximum values here. So if I go for the minimum values, select all the three, that is the X, Y and Z axis, and try to change them like this, then the amount of randomness will also change. Basically, higher the difference between the minimum and the maximum values, more will be the amount of randomness. Let's also go to the max values and change it to something like 0.4 or maybe 0.5, and now for each of these cubes, a random value between minus 0.3 and positive 0.4 will get added to their position. Now we'll be using these cubes that we added here in order to make some clouds in the scene. So for this, we also need to add some distortion to the cubes that we have placed as instances over here. So for this, we'll first add a set position node after the cube node. So press Shift plus A, go to geometry, then in the right category, select the set position node, place it over here. And if you remember, we did the same process in the thunder lighting that we created in the last chapter. We used the set position node over here, connected it to the vector match node with the add operation, and connected the two vector sockets to the position and the noise texture. So for this one also, we'll be connecting the vector match node to the position socket, and this vector match node with the add operation will be connected to the position socket and the noise texture. So I'll select all the three nodes, let's create a duplicate of them and place them over here. Now I'll take the vector socket and connect it to the position. To increase the distortion, let's first go to the noise texture and increase the scaling to something like 5. Let's also increase the number of vertices. So go to the cube node, select the number of vertices in all the three axes and increase it to something like 4 or 5. Now to make these cubes look like clouds, we need to convert the mesh into volume. So for this, we'll be adding the mesh to volume node after the instance on points. So press Shift plus A, go to mesh, and in the operations, select the mesh to volume node. We'll place it over here, and now you can see that the mesh is converted into volume. Let's also increase the density from here in order to see it properly. Now even though the cubes are converted from mesh to volume, but to make them look like real clouds, we need the volume to be distributed all over this area without any empty spaces in between. And for this, we need to distribute some points in the volume. So for this, we'll be using the distribute points in volume node. So press Shift plus A, go to point, and select the distribute points in volume node. Place it over here. We have all these points distributed throughout the volume, and to again convert it into volume or make it look like cloud, we need to convert these points into volume. So let's add the points to volume node. So press Shift plus A, go to point, and select the points to volume node. We'll place it over here, and now if I change the view again, you will notice that we still have these empty spaces, but to fill them up with the clouds, simply go to the distribute points in volume node and increase the density from here. This will increase the number of points, and as a result, the volume will also begin to increase. Let's also increase the density in the mesh to volume node like this, and now this is how the clouds are looking in the scene. To view the thunder lighting along with these clouds, we'll be using a join geometry node. So press Shift plus A, go to geometry and select the join geometry node. We'll place it before the group output. Now I'll take the volume socket and connect it to the geometry in the join geometry node. To view the result here, first I need to remove the viewer node from here. So I'll select it and press X, and now you can see that we are having the clouds along with the thunder lighting. However, we also need to change the position of the clouds in order to place them properly in the scene. So for this, I'll go to the set position node that we added over here and try to change the offset in the X axis like this. So we'll keep it to something like -1, and to be more accurate, let's go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, and we can now see everything properly. So we'll move it in the X axis like this. Let's also move it in the Y axis like this. Also, if you want to increase the size of the clouds, you can go to the size option in the cube and try to increase it like this. However, for now, I think that the scene looks perfect, so we'll finalize this. And yes, if I select the clouds and try to move them by pressing G, then you can see that it's creating this amazing effect along with the thunder lighting. And with this, our scene is now ready to finalize. So first of all, let's go to the render view. To improve the lighting in the scene, I'll select this lamp, go to the object data properties and change the type of light to sun. Let's also reduce the strength to something like 4 or 5. Let's also create a duplicate of this light. So press Shift plus D, move it in the X axis over here, press R to rotate the light. Let's also rotate it in the X axis like this, and now it looks perfect. So first of all, we'll be creating a material for this plane, and if you remember, we made a material using the RGB curves node and the gradient texture in the shader editor. You can even check it from the material properties. We have this material.001 that we created in the last chapter. So to add this material over here, press Shift plus A, go to material and select the set material node. We'll place it over here, and from the list of the materials, I'll select the material.001, and you can see that we have this gradient texture with the red and the blue color that we created in the shader editor. So if you want, you can try to change the things like the handles in the RGB curves to give it a different look like this, or maybe the colors in the color ramp, like you can set any other color, maybe yellow or the green color, but for now I'll go with the blue color only, but we'll reduce the brightness to change it to the dark blue color. Now the plane looks perfect, and now we can create the material for the clouds and the thunder lighting. So first of all, let's go to the geometry nodes editor again, select the cloud, and now we have to create two separate materials, one for the cloud and the other for the thunder lighting. So go to the material properties, click on new material. We'll change the name of this material to cloud, and let's create one more material. Click on the new button and change its name to lighting. To apply these materials, I'll go to the geometry nodes editor, and we have two nodes connecting to the join geometry node. One of them is the curve to mesh node, which is carrying the information about these thunder lightings, and the other one is the points to volume node, which is carrying the information about these clouds. So let's add two set materials node. So press Shift plus A, go to material and select the set material node, place it over here. Let's create a duplicate and place it after the curve to mesh node. Now for the first one, I'll select the cloud material, and for the second one, I'll be selecting the lighting material. To modify the material, let's go to the shader editor from here. Also, since we'll be making the material for the clouds, let's also change the render engine from EV to cycles. Now do ensure that in the material properties, this cloud material is selected. Now since the cloud is not a mesh but a volume, so instead of the principal BSDF node, we'll be using the principal volume node. So I'll select this, press X to delete, then to add the principal volume node, press Shift plus A, go to shader and select the principal volume node. Place it over here, connect the volume socket to the volume in the material output. Now we have the clouds in the scene. To change their color, go to the color option, and to make them darker, I'll reduce the brightness from here. Then you have the option to control the density. So if I increase it, the density of the volume will increase. Then you have the option to control the emission strength and the emission color, but we won't require these things right now. However, if I try to increase the black body intensity to something like 0.1 or maybe 0.2, then you will notice a slight glow of red color around the clouds in the scene. But I think that we should reduce it to a value of approximately 0.15, and now it looks perfect. Moving ahead, let's also create the material for the lighting. So I'll select it from the material properties, and for this one, we'll be using the noise texture. So press Shift plus A, go to texture, and from here, I'll select the noise texture. Then to add the vector mapping and the texture coordinate node, press Ctrl plus T. Then just like always, take the object socket and connect it to the vector. Now to view the output here, I'll take the factor socket and connect it to the base color. If you want, you can increase the scaling from the scale parameter over here, but for now, we'll be focusing on giving some color to the lighting. So for this, we'll be using the color ramp node. So press Shift plus A, go to converter and select the color ramp. ramp. Let's place it over here. Now we'll be changing the first color, which is black, to white color by increasing the brightness from here. Then I'll select the second pointer, and for this one we'll be choosing the light blue color. So I'll take my pointer over here. Then to increase the amount of blue color, I'll move this pointer in this direction. Also, we'll go to the emission. Let's increase the emission strength to something like 2. And for the color, we'll be using the same color that we get from the color ramp. So I'll take this socket and connect it to the emission color. To view the emission effect properly, we need to do some changes in the composting. So I'll open the composting workspace from here, then click on the use nodes. To see the changes that we do in the 3D viewport also, I'll change this window, which is the dope sheet editor, to the 3D viewport. So click on this icon and select the 3D viewport. Also, I'll enable the render view by clicking over here. And now to improve the effect of emission, we'll be using the glare node in the compositor. So press Shift+A, go to filter and select the glare node. We'll place it over here. To ensure that you see the changes in the 3D viewport also, click on this icon and change the option in compositor from disable to always. Then to get the bloom effect, which is required for the emission, I'll change the glare type from streaks to bloom. Also change the quality from medium to high. And now with the help of these parameters, I can easily control the bloom settings in the scene. So first of all, I'll reduce the size to something like 7. Then if you want, you can even try to change the threshold value. But for now, I think that the scene looks perfect. We have this amazing bloom effect applied in the 3D viewport, which is giving a realistic look to the emission material that we added to the lighting in the scene. Let's go to the geometry nodes workspace again, and to view the same changes over here also, click on this icon again, and in the compositor, select the always option. And now I think that the scene is completely ready, and it's totally up to you if you want to change the color of your clouds, or maybe the color of lighting to something else like the dark blue color, or maybe the red color. So you can do the changes accordingly. But for now, let's also go to the camera view by pressing 0 on the numpad. Let's enable the lock camera to view from here. I'll zoom out. If you want, you can also change the color of the background to a specific color, and to do this, go to the world properties by clicking on this globe icon. Then in the color, if I set any particular color, then that color will be applied as the background in the 3D viewport. And with this, we now arrive to the end of the chapter number 51. In this chapter, we used a lot of geometry nodes in order to finalize this amazing lighting scene. So our next chapter will be the chapter number 52, simulation nodes in Blender. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel, press that notification bell so that you can get timely updates about the upcoming chapters. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.